Hello everyone. A few years ago, a fantastic guitarist and YouTuber called Paul Davids made a video where he invited 10 world-class guitarists to take a solo over the same backing track. The results were incredible, and so I emailed Paul asking for his blessing to make a video whereby I analyse that chord progression and show you how you can make your own stunning solos. Paul not only replied, but he kindly said yes and offered words of encouragement for my own channel. So he's an all-round nice guy, has tons of charisma and a spectacular beard. If you haven't already seen Paul's video, check it out on the link above and in the description, and then be sure to come back here so we can work out how we can play our own amazing solos. The backing track used today is available via a link on Paul's video. This video will go into some very tricky theory, but first of all I'm going to give you some cheats and shortcuts to get you up and running. As we delve deeper, if you start to find the theory confusing, I suggest you look at my course of videos on YouTube about music theory. Alternatively, look in the description, I'll put a link there to my book, which is called Music Theory and Application for Guitarists. Now, the backing track that all those guys played over is a very pretty sounding backing track, and feel is everything. So you could just ignore theory altogether. But better still, know your theory and know the neck of the guitar so well that you can feel what you want to play and then your fingers obey. Let's start by looking at that chord progression. We've got C, E7, then we've got F, G, then back to the C, E7, F, back to C. Then we've got C, E7, F, F minor, and then C, E7, and then F to G, and then back to the beginning. So we're in the key of C, but with some surprises. The E7 and the F minor don't belong in that key. What sounds really nice here is if we outline those chord changes. We're going to work towards using these scales. I'm going to have a go at playing over that backing track myself now, using a combination of preordained ideas and some improvisation. I'm going to use my good old PRS through a Line 6 HX stomp and straight into my computer. Before we jump in the deep end with the theory, let's see if we can outline those chord changes with some simple ideas. So first of all, you can use the key of C across the whole neck using the caged method, which I did a video all about. You can also use the C major pentatonic scale, which happens to be the same as the A minor pentatonic scale. Now the problem is, when we come across the E7 chord, it doesn't belong in our key, same with the F minor. So we need to outline those changes. So let's do something really simple. Let's start with, say, an A minor or C major pentatonic scale. And when the E7 chord comes in, we'll try and play notes from the E7 chord. So here's an E7. Okay, now I could play that as a chord, but it just sounds like I'm strumming. So it might be better to arpeggiate that chord. Arpeggio means broken chord. So we can break this up into its constituent parts. So we've got the root note, the third, and you know what? We'll add a fifth as well. And then a minor seventh, and back to the root. So we've got, that's an E7 arpeggio. Listen to what it sounds like in the context of the backing track, which I'm just going to quickly put in my looper here. So C, E7, F, G. Okay, so just to reiterate, that was 1, 3, 5, flat 7 and back to the root. I could also play that here, 1, 3, 5, flat 7, back to the 1. Much simpler than that, I can simply play an E chord. I could take an E chord like this and just play this little triad hit. Let's see what that sounds like. C, E, F, G, or... So the same applies with the F minor chord. Now here's an F minor. We can arpeggiate that by going 1, flat 3, 5, 1, flat 3, 5, 1. We can play an F minor arpeggio up here, or we can play F minor here, or again up here. We don't have to play the whole thing, of course. We can play little bits of it, like Okay, so let's try that on the chord progression where it changes to the F minor. C. For the more sort of technically inclined amongst you, you can get very clever with this, and on the E7 chord you can replace it with an E augmented. Also on the F minor you can play an F minor major 7. A couple of ways of doing that. One of them is here, and another one is up here. Okay, now later on in the video we'll talk about what we can play over that, which is melodic minor. We're also going to talk about Phrygian Dominant over the E7 chord, but let's come back to that. Now, if this is all sounding a bit too pretty, you can add some bluesy tension by playing a C minor blues scale. That kind of wrongness, that slight wrongness, sounds kind of cool. So for example, now the theory. Here are the chords in the key of C. When we harmonise the C major scale, we get C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished. Or if we extend those chords, C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G 7, A minor 7, and B minor 7 flat 5. Every major key is the same. The one chord is always major, the next two are minor, then we've got two majors, then a minor, then a diminished. Or if we extend them, we get major 7, then two minor 7s. The fourth chord is always major 7, the fifth chord is always 7, or dominant 7. The sixth chord is always minor 7, and the last one, the seventh chord, is minor 7 flat 5. So where does the E7 and the F minor fit in? Let's start with the E7. Every major key has a relative minor key that shares all the same notes and all the same chords. The relative minor key always starts from the sixth note of the major scale. So the relative minor of C major is A minor. The problem with the E minor chord here is that it doesn't resolve very well back to the A minor. Classical musicians realised a long time ago that the E7 chord resolved better. In fact, it's such a strong resolve, it's called a perfect cadence. The problem is an E7 chord contains a note of G sharp, whereas the key of A minor normally has a note of G. The simple solution is to swap out the Gs for G sharps, thus creating the A harmonic minor scale, which looks like this. Technically, because we're playing this over an E7, the 5 chord, we're playing the fifth mode of A harmonic minor, which is called E Phrygian Dominant. The formula for which is 1, flat 2, 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7. But can we use this in our relative major key, the key of C? The answer is yes, especially but not exclusively if we follow up with an A minor. In our chord progression, we follow the E7 with F, which creates a nice ascending feel. At this point, you might be thinking, great, have I got to learn harmonic minor and Phrygian dominant scale patterns across the whole neck? That might help, but it's always best to relate what you're playing to chords. Let's take an E7 chord around the middle of the neck like this. We can start with just the chord, and as we did earlier, we can take an arpeggio, and we can start adding the extra notes around it as we feel more confident. So for example, we can add that flat 2. We can then add the 3, the 4, the 5, the flat 6, and the flat 7, and back to the root. On its own, it sounds kind of Eastern, but in context with the backing track, it sounds very different. Eventually, we end up with a whole pattern fitting around the chord like this. Now, I've drawn in grey the chord notes, hiding behind an E Phrygian dominant scale pattern, which looks like this. Here's our root. We can start from here. Now, I've only given you one scale pattern there, but if you want to learn them all across the whole neck, I suggest you look at my video on the harmonic minor scale and its patterns. But you can, of course, start with any chord shape and just add extra intervals as you go. For example, here's an E7. A more familiar one is an A7 shape. What we can do is we can just take the chord itself and arpeggiate like this. And then what we can do is we can elaborate by adding those extra intervals. So for example, we've got our 1, we've got our flat 2, we've got our 3rd, our 4th, our 5th, we've got our flat 6, our flat 7, and our octave, and so on. And we end up with a scale pattern that looks like this. But here's a nice shortcut for you. What you can do is you can take your pentatonic scale, and when you hear that kind of classical sounding E7 chord going to A minor or going to the F chord, what you can do is you can adapt your pentatonic scale to accommodate that wrong note, that G sharp. So instead of this G, you get, and again there. Let's see what that sounds like in our chord progression. If you wanted to apply this to other patterns of the pentatonic scale, like say pattern 4, do the same thing. Take your G's and sharpen them. It's always one fret in front of the minor, the relative minor root note. Okay, so imagine if you're playing an A minor and that's our root note. One fret lower than that gives you our magic note. So you get this, that kind of thing. Or G sharp, G sharp, G sharp. One other cool trick is to note that hiding inside E Phrygian Dominant is a diminished arpeggio. So when the E chord comes in, what we can do is we can move one fret up from this to the F and play this, a series of minor thirds. And this is a diminished arpeggio, then a minor third up from there, minor third up from there, minor third up from there, minor third up from there. I could go across to this minor third, or I could do this kind of movement. Now on to that F minor chord. Here are the available triad chords in the key of C. It's very common to borrow chords from a parallel minor key. It's called a modal interchange, though I prefer calling it simply borrowing chords. Swapping out the 4 chord for a minor 4 chord is especially common. This means that over our F minor chord we can play a C natural minor scale, or technically speaking its 4th mode, F Dorian. The formula for Dorian is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7 when compared to an F major scale. And it can be played like this. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, back to the 1. Over the minor 4, instead of F minor, you can actually play F minor major 7. Now that would look like this. Now on its own it sounds weird, but in the context of the chord progression it sounds okay. For example, when we get F, F minor and back to C, it sounds quite smooth. And what we can play over that is F melodic minor. Now that's even smoother than F Dorian because we are now one note closer to our original key of C. So if I play this scale, it looks like this. And here we have this E instead of an E flat. So we're a little bit closer to the key of C. So we've got and that's basically made from a 1 to a flat 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then back to the 1. 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, flat 3. So finally, our chord progression has these options. We can play major across most of it, but when the E7 chord comes in, we can play Phrygian Dominant. And over the F minor chord, we can play F Dorian or F melodic minor. Believe it or not, there's even more things we could do with this simple chord progression, but there is enough here for now to keep us going for a very long time. If you found this video useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.